Колеги, доброго дня. Дякую всім, що...
Dear colleagues, good morning. I'm glad to see all of you. And I hope that despite the weather, as our topic today is very interesting, I hope that you will all practically enjoy the participation in today's venue. Today it's our second time, so to say, second time summary of the results of foreign policy. And the discussion is supposed to be focused around the issues that you might consider problematic, unresolved, and would like to comment on. So I suggest that we structure our work as follows. First, we have done the polling of the foreign policy experts, people who professionally write about foreign policy, who comment professionally on foreign policy issues. And also among them were the members of academia who teach the subjects related to foreign policy. So in total, more than 100 people was questioned, was polled, and we have collated very interesting data. So there is a lot of information to present to you, but I'll try to be concise so that everyone would have an opportunity to speak, and you have an opportunity to ask questions. So about the assessments made by our experts, their possible comments, recommendations for the next year maybe. Then we would like to present our internet portal of foreign policy. It contains the database compiled by the foreign policy experts. This site can be described as a hub from where you could, or on which you can find some information, or rather a lot of information about foreign policy, and thus participate as a member of the public at large in the formulation of Ukraine's foreign policy. I will be joined by two more experts, Mr. Serhii Herasymchuk, who is a representative of Ukrainska Prisma, and then Mr. Serhii Korsunskyi, who is the director of Hennadii Udovenko Diplomatic Academy. Then there will be another expert. We expect Ms. Stefanishyna to join us, who is the director of Government Office for European and Euro-Atlantic Integration. And also Danylo Lubkivskyi, who is Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. So I now invite Serhii to start our discussion. So what all that data has shown or shows? Well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. I'm glad to see all of the participants here. So the polling was done by filling in a questionnaire, an online questionnaire. 106 people in total took part. Among them were the members of academia, the diplomats, and the journalists who specialize in international policy, in foreign policy issues. Among the questions were first asked these questions that we can call optimistic questions. So what was the best result in terms of foreign policy of Ukraine for last year? The majority of the respondents certainly answered that granting of the visa-free regime for Ukraine was the largest success. 61 experts named that, and 13 people referred to the association agreement between Ukraine and the European Union. As we all know, where there are successes, there might be also failures. And among the failures, the experts named the deterioration of relations with our Western partners, specifically with, or especially with Poland and Hungary and some other neighboring countries to the west of Ukraine. 22 experts mentioned the lack of progress of the return into Ukrainian jurisdiction of the provinces of Donbass and Crimea. And when we asked the experts to give an overall assessment, a score, so to say, of the overall score of the foreign policy of Ukraine, the maximum was 5 points. The majority of them put 3. Here you can see on this slide, you can see the implementation of foreign policy of Ukraine in a number of areas. And its assessment again on a 5-point scale. There are two items or two issues on which everybody agreed that it was, the majority of experts agreed that there were problems. It was Ukraine's image and why did it happen? It happened because of 70, in the opinion of 73 experts, it happened because of the lack of strategic vision of Ukraine's foreign policy. So a number of experts mentioned the lack of appropriate financial resources or proper financial resources. And some of them also mentioned this conflict with Russia that, in their view, also affected Ukraine's, the efficiency of Ukraine's foreign policy. When we asked the experts whether, in their view, the adoption of the new Act on the Diplomatic Service was needed, the majority of them said yes. The question on whether their expectations, the experts' expectations with regard to the Ukraine's policy vis-à-vis Russia is relevant, they said yes, the majority of them said yes. And then with regard to the European Union, again, a lot of them said that yes, to a great extent, it corresponds to their expectations. And 67 of experts said that vis-à-vis the United States, Ukraine's foreign policy was adequate and the question of whom they considered to be the largest friends, the biggest friends of Ukraine. Lithuania took number 1 with 93 experts, then Canada, 89 experts, the United States 49 people, Great Britain 38, and Japan 25. So a lot of them said that good relations with these countries has been a great achievement. The opposite question, what countries are most hostile in their view towards Ukraine? 99 of the experts mentioned Russia. Hungary was unexpectedly at the 2nd place. Hungary, as you might know, reacted bitterly to Ukraine's new law on education. And the 3rd place, at the 3rd place there was Belarus, then Serbia, and to my great regret, Poland took, the Republic of Poland took the 5th place. Poland, which until recently used to be among the biggest friends of Ukraine. Then we asked the experts about what media, in their view, were the best, the most efficient in their coverage of foreign policy. Who of them or which of them had the best analysis, presented the best analysis. 46 experts mentioned Европейская правда. The second place was assigned to Zerkalo Tygodnia, and it's interesting that many experts were mentioned. A lot of experts mentioned both Европейская правда and Zerkalo Tygodnia practically at the same place. So it was even hard to assign to distinguish between them. And the third place was taken by the newspaper Den. We also put a question to the experts who of the MPs were, in their view, most active in terms of foreign policy efforts. Ms. Hanna Hopko was mentioned as a leading figure. Then Mr. Volodymyr Ariev, who is prominent in his work at in the European Assembly. Then Deputy Speaker Ms. Gerashchenko. And again, there was a number of discrepancies in the evaluations by the experts. Then the fourth place was given to Mr. Tarasuk, and then to Ms. Serhii. Which of Ukraine's diplomatic missions and representations abroad have been most productive? Among them, the UN mission was the first. The next one was Ukraine's embassy to the United States. Again, the priorities of the foreign policy is countering the Russian Federation and the question about which regions were the most had the best prospects for Ukraine's foreign policy interests promotion. Again, Europe led. The question about whether Ukraine could become a regional leader, 11 experts said yes, it could become a leader in Eastern Europe. And priorities for the next year, I think for the diplomats it would be particularly interesting. So it's countering Russian aggression. It's the first position, 80 experts. Euro-Atlantic integration, then implementation of association agreement with the EU. 29 experts mentioned also the need to draw more investments into Ukraine, including both from the European Union countries and China and Japan and the other countries, and promotion of Ukraine's foreign policy interests outside Europe. It was mentioned as a priority by 20 respondents. That's all information I wanted to present to you. If you have any questions, you're most welcome to ask them. So we've got some background, so to say, for our further discussion. Let me now present some more experts who joined us. Ms. Olga Stefanishyna, who is the Director of the Government Office for European and Euro-Atlantic Integration, and then the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Mr. Danylo Lubkivskyi. You might remember Rongoff's book, Say It in 6. So that's what I invite you to do. Can you, so to say, pack in the next 5 minutes all the thoughts and ideas that you would like to share with us, so that the other participants could have some time to ask questions. So among the issues that were the focus of this questionnaire that was presented What's your assessment? What areas of Ukraine's foreign policy were most effectively, implemented, which not, where you could see the failures? So let me turn the floor over to Mr. Serhii and ask him about that law on the diplomatic service, a new law, another law on the diplomatic service. Is it needed? A lot of experts mentioned it as a priority. So do you think it could provide any positive sides to the diplomatic service, to the diplomatic academy that you are heading? Well, that law will be very timely. The law already exists, and it covers the the largest part of the basics, so to say, of the diplomatic work. But with the changing structures of the government itself, of the cabinet of ministers and its entities, that law is, to a certain part, or in some parts rather, needs to be altered. So there are some specific requests, requirements to the diplomats, to the people who aspire to be diplomats. For example, case with the recent arrest of our former colleague, Mr. Yezhov, who was arrested by Ukraine's security service. Similar issues, including also the questions of provisioning, financial compensation to the diplomats for their work. And so on and so forth. Therefore, this law might contribute, if it's properly done, to turning Ukraine's diplomatic service into a powerful instrument for the ongoing war. Ukraine's diplomatic service has been practically defending the Ukrainian state. I can attest to that, having worked as an ambassador of Ukraine abroad, and having returned again into Ukraine, I can be a witness to that. The more, or rather the better the Ukrainian diplomats work, the less Ukrainian soldiers die confronting the separatists. Among the best results, in my view, are certainly have certainly been the association agreement with the EU, and then the granting by the European Union of the visa-free regime for Ukraine, to Ukraine. So I'd say that, or rather, I cannot say that the diplomatic service is capable of resolving all the problems that it faces, but still, as you can see, our work is efficient and successful because the sanctions continue against Russia, and the other countries are following practically Ukraine's positions. And that goes on at the backdrop of a highly qualified, I would say, counteraction by the Russian Federation. I'm now heading the Diplomatic Academy of Ukraine, and I can inform you that it has been radically changed. It used to be a small institution, rather small, rather closed institution. Today, a number of things have changed with, growing qualification and competencies of the other Ukrainian universities. We restructured our academy, but I can assure you that it's an effective tool, an effective institution for training Ukrainian diplomats. So our graduates or alumni are the people who usually freely speak two foreign languages and are ready to work in any country, whether those countries are friendly towards Ukraine or unfriendly. These people can work in the conditions or under stressful conditions. So these requirements and these modern needs, they put a number of new requirements towards us, and we adequately changed the process of training in our academy. I would be glad to answer your questions. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see on this slide, there are the priorities as they were mentioned by, scored, so to say, by the experts whom we questioned. Many of them mentioned, though, that the level of, so to say, fulfillment of these priorities is quite or has been quite low. What's your reaction to this assessment? Well, from the very beginning, I would insist that among those Ukrainian diplomatic representations and missions abroad, the Ukraine's mission at NATO should be certainly mentioned. This is a small team of people who work very intensely, and I hope that a great deal of the successes of Ukrainian diplomacy can be attributed to their work. So please don't overlook and pass them over in your scoring of more successful Ukrainian diplomatic missions. Speaking about the implementation of the priorities, I wouldn't agree to the assessment by some experts that the implementation of the priorities of Ukraine's foreign policy have been ineffective. If we look at the implementation of the association agreement and the other successful Euro-integrational and Euro-Atlantic integration aspirations of Ukraine, they should mainly be implemented inside the country by the reforms inside the country. That's what our European experts, partners ask from us. With regards to the image of Ukraine, we are going to form a new group for strategic communications, whose task will be to formulate strategic messages that will then be conveyed outside of Ukraine. We plan this strategic communication group to be able to present Ukraine's successes, because, as you know, the negative news they tend to spread rather, quickly. But still, we should not leave out of our attention the fact that domestic reforms are needed for Ukraine, and that will be the best, so to say, clue, the best key, most efficient key towards Euro integration of Ukraine. One of the good examples, very strong examples, is the introduction of the electronic bidding system for a public procurement system. And that saved billions and billions of money for this country, and a number of other instruments that have recently been introduced and For example, the adoption of the roadmap for the improvement of commercial ties with the European Union, and then the opening of the market for postal services, for transportation services, and the whole number of other areas. So let us understand that, and let us hope that the decisions that the government is taking now these days will produce good results in due time, maybe in a couple of years, within the next few years. They work about forming a more positive image of Ukraine abroad, and then the efforts to make other countries continue their sanctions against the Russian Federation. This should continue to remain our priorities. And as you know, the Prime Minister assured us that the new plan of work, the new program, so to say, of work for the government for the next year, 2018, embraces, so to say, in entirety all the commitments that Ukraine undertook under the association agreement. Thank you, Ms. Olha, for your presentation. Your presentation is a good example of how a lot of issues could be packed, so to say, squeezed into this 6-minute space. Here we can see on this slide the failures. The deterioration of Ukraine's relations with some Western countries to the west of Ukraine. Why is that, do you think? Well, I'd start with congratulating you on the occasion of 100 years of establishment during the civil war of the diplomatic, 100 years ago, Ukraine's diplomatic service of the so-called Ukraine's People's Republic that existed in 1918. We should understand that this day might be of a sort of a jubilant event, particularly for the dissidents who tried to maintain those, the memories about that, and maybe some writers and some figures of art. As you might know, there was a certain Mr. Alexander Shulgin, who was the first secretary for Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Ukrainian People's Republic. So we, as Ukrainian diplomats, we consider this not just some festivity that is not related with modern-day realities. We consider this as the first instance of Ukraine's emergence and international emergence, so to say. And a modern diplomat, as compared to a diplomat of the olden days, is not this, exquisite, so to say, person, highly educated, and who usually is almost exclusively in possession of some information that is quite restricted to the public at large. Today, the situation is different. Today, we think that the accent should be placed on analytical work, on working out some assessments, on our priorities. And if we look at Ukraine's diplomatic service activity from that perspective, we might say that we should thank Ukrainian diplomats who, again, try to defend Ukraine. in the difficult conditions in which Ukraine is today. And we also need to look at the problems that Ukrainian diplomatic service confronts. Speaking about the priorities, if you can get back to that slide where the priorities were mentioned by the experts who were polled. As you can see, 40 experts, more than any other numbers of experts, mentioned the issue of countering the Russian aggression. Certainly, we see that this, for example, direction of Ukraine's diplomatic service activities, as well as many others, are affected by the fact that we do not have any professional foreign policy additions as yet. And in many respects, it's difficult to organize effective foreign policy work without, qualified expertise by the foreign policy experts. Speaking about the implementation of the association agreement with the European Union, I would certainly agree to the statement by previous speaker that the focus here should be our domestic work, our domestic reforms. And again, another issue, in my view, is the need to increase the efforts on how to guarantee Ukraine's, nationhood, nation state, because as 100 years ago, Ukraine is involved again in the hostilities with the neighboring countries, and for example, this failure of with the Budapest memorandum, when Ukraine inherited from the Soviet Union some ballistic missiles that were commanded by the Ministry of Defense of the Soviet Union, and they were taken out, extracted, so to say, from Ukraine. Ukraine was practically made by international community to sign respective documents and let those missiles go. And then the issue of Ukraine's security became more topical, so to say. Speaking about this today's conflict, there is a Norman format, as we call it, of negotiations on Ukraine's conflict in the East. We cannot speak about resolving this conflict without speaking about Ukraine's own regional policy. And Ukraine needs, again, here some serious analytical efforts. This regional policy is also important in terms of trans-border cooperation with the neighboring regions of the neighboring countries. Yet in 2014, there was an idea of establishing of a new institute, so to say, foreign policy, and Ukraine and its publication, Ukrainian Vestnik. It has not yet been implemented, that idea, and I'm asking myself why. I certainly understand that we have various problems, financial problems and so on, but we somehow need to implement this idea, and then we will improve the efficiency of the work of our otherwise very professional diplomatic service. Well, with the statement by Mr. Lubkivskyi about this lack, so to say, of a platform for the exchanges, professional exchanges among the diplomats, I would ask now again Olga Chizhova, our expert, to present again our portal, foreign policy internet portal, as a platform for these exchanges. Well, very briefly, the idea to establish this internet portal on the foreign policy of Ukraine, we wanted to create a platform where we could present all the information about foreign policy of Ukraine, and to make the foreign policy experts and the journalists, for example, the foreign policy makers, decision makers, be able to use that, that internet portal as a platform for their work, for their, for example, for decision making process. We also prepared a database on the experts of foreign policy, and we enabled direct contacts among the experts. I, as a communications director, give answers if our portal and its team are asked about something. But otherwise, the experts can communicate directly, both among themselves and with the public. So we invite all of you to register as the users, so that you could have full-scale access. And you also can facilitate, by doing that, your contacts with the journalists, with the other experts, with the people, anybody who would like to have any information on, especially the diplomats, who would like to have some information on that or the other issue of Ukraine's foreign policy. It's certainly useful for the MPs who are involved in foreign policy of Ukraine. There is a variety of choices on the topics, on the issues that are presented there. And you can even order an analytical assessment, analytic report on any issue of foreign policy that is of interest to you. So our portal is fully capable of quickly reacting to any requests, information requests, analysis requests. So for the experts, it will be useful. We invite you to do so, to register yourself with our portal and to become one of its participants, participating experts. And for the authorities, for example, for the members of the authorities, it is useful because the experts that take part in the work of our portal can generate a lot of analysis, a lot of information, memos, and reports on the issues that are of interest. Let me emphasize that there have already been 52 experts registered with the portal, so their expertise is at your disposal. 3 of our 5 panelists will have to leave us quite soon, so I invite the members of the audience to put their questions now, so that later on some of the experts might leave. And
first of all, thank you for organizing this event. I greet everyone with the diplomacy with our professional holiday. And the question to Serhii Korsunskyi, and this is not about the academy. So you worked in Turkey, in the Ukrainian embassy, and in Ukraine we lack comprehensive understanding how to build a relationship with Turkey, and experts in the survey, they didn't mention Turkey, and how can we resolve the situation, how to build a relationship with Turkey? We know all these issues with Erdogan, and what is the value of Turkey for Ukraine now? Good afternoon, Stanislavich Zhenkovsky, postgraduate student of Herasymchuk University. I would like, first of all, to greet everyone on 100th anniversary of the restoration of diplomatic service. And my question to our speakers is about our permanent membership in the Security Council, about the voting that happened recently, our positive voting on the resolution about the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. How can it influenced the relationship between the United States and Ukraine, and the United States vetoed the resolution, and they want that Jerusalem is the capital. So what is your opinion on this, and what about our relationship with the United States? What will be next? So Vladimir Boyski, first question to Hennadii and Serhii Herasymchuk. It is connected with our relationship with Poland and Hungary. I'm a bit surprised with the results of the survey. I hope that this deterioration is temporary and that we can look at Poland as at our strategic partner, and I believe that this is just situational case. And what can we do now in the short-term prospect or mid-term prospect? What can we do in order to resolve these problems with these two countries? And also about voting on Jerusalem. If diplomacy is the art of possible, do you believe that our representatives in the UN made everything possible, and the leadership of our state, that they chose the best option in this case? Andrei Snishko, Zik Information Agency. Question to diplomats. I would like to hear about your practical advice, your thoughts concerning 2018 fight for the rights of our citizens in Crimea, and so some practical aspects, please. So we will start from Danylo. I will be brief. These questions of yours are the luxury, except the question about Turkey, because we can speak a lot about it and decipher it, but I would like to answer like this. First, concerning our neighbors, yes, we want to hope that this is situational deterioration, but let's look at the situation, and let's look at 2018 local elections in Poland and the overall parliamentary elections in 2019, whether they improve the discourse in Poland concerning Ukraine, that it will shift from those topics that create misunderstanding that could influence our relationship. So both local and parliamentary elections will influence radicalization of relationship, and now we have to establish the contact between the heads of the states, and these are practical proposals of the head of the government, and he should address the head of the government of Poland, and also there should be proper contact established between the ministers of foreign affairs. This is the dialogue, despite overall deterioration. And also there should be proper initiatives. The border crossings, capacity and infrastructure, our proposals concerning parity of cultural and humanitarian cooperation. And now I believe Ukraine should raise the question to honor in Poland the names of famous Ukrainians who contributed a lot to Polish statehood and our leaders who created Ukraine. So in Poland there can be streets named after Gruszewski, Franco, and other Ukrainian prominent people. About the initiatives concerning humanitarian rights in occupied territory, I believe that for Ukrainian diplomacy, it is important to use all its creative potential in order to use the opportunity of the next year when Canada will be the head of the G7 and Poland will be the heading in the Security Council. So concerning these cases, I would provide the recommendation to Ukrainian diplomats. For us, it is important to address our Canadian and Polish partners, and we should promote the issues of protection of human rights in occupied territories, humanitarian area. In this area, it is difficult to differentiate the issues. So Donbass is one basket and Crimea is the other basket now. So this issue should be combined. Let me answer this question. This is a really important question. We should unite to these issues concerning the problems of people who suffer from Russian aggression. And I have recently returned, and I attended the meeting with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Canada, and there this issue was discussed of how we could cooperate in the framework of this issue. So also the issue of Jerusalem. There is clear principle in international relationship. We should adhere to the basic norms of international law. When we try to guess whether the policy like this is good for us, or whether someone will dislike our decision. So the time is really specific now, and this choice is important, but also there is international law, and we should adhere to international law, and we should speak about the values. This is the main in our activity. We should be united in our values, both with the United States and with Israel. So about the issue of Turkey, and then I will leave for the next meeting, with the official meeting with the president. So unfortunately, the experts didn't mention this country. I will open a secret for you that during the visit of Yushchenko in 2008 to Turkey, I was surprised that there was a tense situation, and we should care more about our southern vector, and this vector is Turkey. This is an important economic and political partner. We went along this way, but there was a watershed on foreign policy and of Turkey changed, and Andrei Sibiga now works there, and it is difficult for him to work in such conditions. And this is the question to the expert community. This is lack of understanding of the importance of this country concerning our interests in the Black Sea region. And for us, it is really important to have clear support from Turkey in the really important issues such as Crimea. I know that a lot of things are going on. There are a lot of visits, contacts at different levels, and I hope that in time it will be clear that this country is important, not less than Poland or Lithuania, that it can contribute and help Ukraine to restore its sovereignty and to promote its interests. Thank you. I have to leave. Thank you. Serhii, please, your answer. Serhii Vladimirovich is still in this hall, and I would like to say that 3 experts mentioned Turkey, but this was not enough to be on the priority of 5 in the rating. So concerning Hungary and Poland, for me, this was an unpleasant surprise that they appeared in the category of adversity, and a situation in Poland and Hungary is not good. And in Poland, they will have elections next year. And about the parties, I will say Orban 44% now, with the prospect 55%, but 44 is enough for majority, and he wants constitutional majority. The biggest competitor of Orban, if there's Jobbik, who is even worse, and that is evident, competition between Orban and we should work with the Momentum. Momentum is the party that unites the youth, and they have about 3%, and Jurchan Democratic Coalition, the situation is unclear, 5%, so not competitor, and it is understandable that maybe 5% won't allow him to promote the interest. MMP 10% plus minus, so theoretically they could be an alternative to Orban if they got united, and also this has all the chances to get success in local elections, and they work a lot on this, and so there should be the negotiations with participation of Brussels, and this is the most favorable choice. But we have some progress with Poland. There is a visit of Duda to Kharkiv, but it is too early to speak about progress. So several questions, please, or a comment, please. Not you, behind you. I have a question to Olga Stefanishyna concerning the association agreement. We launched this agreement, and this is a prominent success. I would like to know your opinion about what has been done this year concerning energy aspects of the association agreement, and what is planned for the next year. That would be interesting to know your opinion about infrastructure, cooperation in the sphere of infrastructure with the EU, the development of gas infrastructure. Thank you. You have a question, right? Do you have a question? Okay, please ask. Take a mic, please. So I saw in the list of priorities 29% the wish of our government to attract foreign investment in Ukraine. How does it correlate with the fact that was in Focus magazine that the Ministry of Economic Development didn't establish the contact with China for 3.7 billion in this area?
Thank you. My answer will be very short. It's been applied even before it went into effect, and the implementation of our commitments were complete on, for example, on the electricity market. That will guarantee transparent and competitive conditions for both Ukrainian companies and the other companies, and an opportunity for Ukrainian companies to go to international markets. And for example, the energy efficiency requirement is going to be financed by the funding of the Ukrainian national budget, and then from the fund to which the foreign donors will contribute. Naftogaz of Ukraine will be divided into a number of entities, and that has been unsuccessful. The efforts in that realm have been unsuccessful until recently. They were unsuccessful. The majority of the experts with whom we cooperate now, are cooperating now, are the energy experts in the energy sector. Well, I will add, because the previous answers were exhaustive. Let me just point out that our overall deficiency, so to say, Ukraine's deficiency, is that we are a big country, but we behave as without any strategic vision. We underestimate ourselves. And it seems to me that what we need now is that Ukraine's diplomatic service should be viewed as a leading and creative force capable of care of foreign policy initiatives, and that's what we lack, this environment, creative environment, so to say. And by creating this new horizon, I would say, we promote this new thinking, new way of thinking. Ukraine aspires to be a leading country in many respects, but, for example, not within the whole European neighborhood policy. Ukraine can be a local leader. Ukraine, by its political tradition, is an antithesis to what we describe as, expansionism, even imperialism in the East European region. That is the sense of Ukrainian nationhood and statehood. Ukraine has a capacity to be an initiator of a dialogue with historically difficult partners. And among them, there are our Western partners with whom we need to be firm, but continue talking in a friendly manner. Ukraine should exert its maximal efforts in containing its historical adversary, which is Russia, and therefore Ukraine's aspiration is to be a part of the European Union, and thus Ukraine should be interested in strengthening the European Union, Therefore, Ukraine is interested in a firm relationship between Brussels as the capital of the European Union and Washington. We view that as an instrument of turning Russia into their, the riverbed, so to say, of civilized diplomatic or foreign policy relations. Ukraine has this capacity to become a leader, but we have not used until now this potential. So today we are witnessing the commencement of the new quality of Ukraine's diplomacy that will make Ukraine a qualitatively new force actor. We need to wind up this marathon, so to say, of discussions of Ukraine's foreign policy. And let me congratulate all the interested parties with this 100 years of the emergence of of Ukraine and its diplomatic service first appearance. Let me thank also Ukraine's Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. So thank you all, and again, congratulations.